Hi everyone, welcome to Rainbow Baby Week. I'm really excited today because we have got Manisha here, who is also one of my colleagues from other work that I do outside of Willow's Rainbow Box. And today's topic we're talking about in general is culture, community, and pregnancy after loss. But the topic of this video is counselling services and South Asian communities, because Manisha is a counsellor. And I'm going to pass over to Manisha to introduce yourself and some of your connections with work in baby loss and pregnancy after loss.
Thank you, Emily. And yeah, it's really, really great to be here. Really excited for this week to just raise awareness around pregnancy after loss, especially for, South Asian communities. Um, so I'm a perinatal and baby loss counsellor. I specialize in supporting families who are pregnant after loss, and I've been doing that for a few years, even before I completed my training. So I started working with families probably about 6 years ago, um, because I started to support families who are who are feeling really stressed during the pregnancy and who felt that they couldn't go to like regular antenatal classes. So I have a background in teaching antenatal classes, hypnobirthing, and as a doula. But my focus was very much trying to support the people who didn't feel they could get support from like mainstream group services. And I've experienced pregnancy after infertility, so I know that high stress, and that's what kind of got me into this field. So when I started supporting families who experience high anxiety during pregnancy, 90% of them were pregnant after loss, and they felt they couldn't go to regular antenatal classes. Hypnobirthing was done very differently for them, and that's where I started to support families. I also then started volunteering for a local organisation who I'm now a counsellor for, called Zephyrs in Nottingham, for their pregnancy after loss hope group. Just again doing some workshops around managing anxiety. And I think it's all about that validation that, when people say when you're anxious during pregnancy, you've just got to calm down. That's not the reality. You can't just
Yeah.
calm down. It's validation. It's taking it one step at a time. So that's where my passion is, and it's led me to now specializing in this during my through my own counselling.
Thank you so much. It's you've got some valuable experience within this field. And I wanted to ask you, so as a counsellor, when we're thinking about South Asian communities, so we've done a lot of work ourselves, and we know like there's a lot of work to be done. But what do you find are some of the barriers and challenges for families in South Asian communities when it comes to accessing counselling services?
I think there's a lot, and I think it's so layered. There's no one issue. There's so many kind of different challenges for different people, but I think the main things from my experience has to be lack of representation. So going to see a counselor who's not going to understand your history, your background, the challenges from being brought up within that South Asian culture, and the stigma of baby loss within our communities, within our culture. We do not talk about baby loss. I think I must have been in my late teens, early 20s when my mum told me about my grandma who had experienced three she had 3 or 4 experiences of baby loss, so miscarriage, stillbirth, and a young child. um it's not something we spoke about,
No.
within our community. I was a lot older before my mom spoke to me about that, and it kind of just came up in conversation, and I was like, wow. And when you hear about things that's happening within our families, it's very like it's just surface level, like that's just happened, and okay, we're not going to talk about it. Let's just
Yeah.
just move on. Do you know what I mean? I mean, when I'm
Yeah,
talking,
yeah.
just mentioned if it's relevant, and then move on. We never sit and we talk about the impact it's having. I think the other thing that comes with that is, when you do know about the things that our grandparents, our parents have been through on that level when it comes to baby loss and what they've had to experience. So, for example, my grandma would have been in Kenya. So my mum's from Kenya. So my grandma would have been in Kenya, Nairobi, in Kenya, and the support that she would have received for that would have been bare minimal, you know?
Yeah.
So when you think about us now having our own experiences of baby loss, I feel like we sometimes compare, like our parents and our grandparents went through that with nothing. So how
Yeah.
can I complain when there's already so much available to us? So I think there's that, the kind of the taboo around it, the stigma around it, but also maybe that level of shame of I should be stronger,
Yeah. I was
so
going
I
to
don't
say
need
it was,
help.
yeah, it's a bit like they did it, why can't I? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you don't approach counselling services because, again, there's the lack of representation. So really having to talk about and explore these things because it is going to bring up parts of our history, parts of our background automatically. But I have so many times spoken to women and they've said, I don't want to explain my culture to my therapist. I don't want to spend the first few sessions explaining my culture, my faith, the rituals. All I don't want to do any of that. I want them to just understand where I'm coming from without being judged or without them having to ask me more questions about that rather than what I'm feeling and what I'm
Yeah.
experiencing. So there's that lack of representation. I think as well with the lack of representation, it doesn't show us that we can go to counselling because if you do not have counsellors and therapists from our background, it kind of says, is it it questions, is it for us then? If there are no counsellors who look like us, is therapy for us? Is counselling for us, you know? So there's that barrier. When it comes to representation, I think as well. And then you've got like I was talking about the stigma, the fact that we don't talk about it within our community, you know. We don't talk about the importance of getting support, and then we question ourselves of, am I weak? Is that why I need support? Because again, my mom, my parents, my grandparents went through all of this and they were strong and they were fine and they got through it. So that means I have to get through it. And counseling means I need extra help, which therefore means I'm weak.
Yeah. And there's also an added layer, I think, for men who want to get help. Like there is a lot of toxic masculinity. Um, and I was actually like, I was talking to my dad yesterday, a couple of days ago, because we've just had Raksha
Yeah.
and the real deep meaning of like the protective factor of the brother and the male and how they should be strong and protecting, and it's just like all these things are ingrained in our culture. So for a man who wants to get help, who's struggling with baby loss or who's even struggling with the pregnancy after and is anxious as well, that must be really, really hard.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky for men because they have to be more open to get the support. Like people will ask women generally, because they're the pregnant one, how are you feeling? This must be difficult for you. Even if it's not from their own community, they're going to get it from people who may know their story. But again, with men, people are not going to go and ask them, how are you dealing with this? How is this for you? What is this bringing up for you? So then that's another thing of, I can't talk about what's happening to me. My priority is my partner. And yes, they are priority, but you're also priority. It doesn't have to be either or. And I think people
Yeah.
sometimes feel like it has to be either or, like you can both get the support that you need. And you feeling anxious during this time and you feeling, you struggling during this time doesn't mean that you are kind of taking over, I guess, for what your partner's going through. Um, and yeah, I feel like if we talk about it more within our communities, it would hopefully in time, I'm hoping in time it will start opening up those conversations for women, for men, for couples as well, actually, and how that
Yeah.
impacts the relationship, because that in itself is another thing, and how people deal with the emotions around baby loss and pregnancy after loss very differently. But how do they still stay connected as a couple, and how do they both get what they need in that?
So mental health counselling and therapy, they've all historically held stigma, as we've just discussed, within some communities. So as a counsellor, how do you address that stigma and work to break it down?
I am trying to do my best in ways that make sense for our communities. And what I'm trying to figure out, and we've had these conversations, Anita, about how do we do things that work for our communities, because we're seeing how things are happening for other communities that are really great, but somehow, and there's such a massive wall up for the South Asian community when we talk about mental health, baby loss, anything around that. So I try to do a lot within Support Me, and where we do training around culturally aligned practice, etc., to help then engage therapists and healthcare professionals in understanding the challenges that families, not just the South Asian community, Black Asian migrant communities have when it comes to mental health, because we talk about mental health and that perinatal mental health specifically. Um, so we're doing a lot of that. But one of my things that I'm focusing on now is around perinatal mental health and baby loss. So using my social media, I'm trying to do more kind of content around that. I'm speaking at events and conferences around the importance of, culturally aligned care and actually having those conversations. Because if we can support families, but then we can also educate healthcare professionals, you kind of bringing them both together.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why the training that we're hopefully going to be doing very soon, and ASHA training, is also really important, because within that is that training module on culturally aligned baby loss, and we're going to also talk about it in our pregnancy after loss training as well. But I think the training is one aspect, but I think we also need to start creating a space for those with lived experiences, but those with professional experience within this from the South Asian community to start talking more. We are not doing enough about actually addressing the challenges and talking more about the barriers, but also what families need, what do people need within this space. And if we
Yeah.
can't have those conversations, we're then trying to start supporting families, because me and you, yes, we're South Asian, but we can't speak for everyone. And I think there is
Yeah.
this assumption that, well, you're South Asian, you'll know. No, we don't know,
Yeah.
because we still have, our own nuanced experiences, and we have our own kind of different faiths, but also our upbringing is going to be very different as well, depending on where we're from, etc. So I want to break away from that assumption that you can have one spokesperson for a whole community, and try to find a way to get that collaboration of voices together, so people can hear about different experiences, so
Yeah.
other people can feel they can talk about their own experiences, even if it's not the same as what one South Asian person is saying. I think, I don't know if I'm making sense,
You
but
are, because
yeah,
there are so many different communities within South Asian communities. It's
yeah,
not just, and we're not all the same. It's
yeah,
like, when people tried to group BAME, when
yeah,
that BAME was a thing, and
yeah,
they tried to group people together and make resources that fit that one group of people, you just
yeah.
can't do it. And so, yeah, I can talk about my experience and my perspective, and you can talk about yours, but there are just so many more out there. So, yeah, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, so I think if we can start talking about all of, and giving the space for families who are comfortable to talk about, and giving them a platform to talk about their experiences, it will hopefully encourage others to speak out. And then
Yeah.
when we know what's going on and we can really understand people's barriers, then we can start making steps towards sharing those with healthcare professionals, but making those changes on a, systemic level within the NHS or within services, etc. But we can't do that unless we hear from people.
Yeah. So taking it back to pregnancy after loss, how do you feel that counselling can benefit couples who are going through pregnancy after loss in the South Asian community?
I think it's a space where families can really talk about their anxieties, because it's such a conflict for families to feel that joy, but guilt and grief and
Yeah.
shame all together. You know, even I've heard from families where they feel like, I'm happy to be pregnant, but I'm also really sad, because it's one reminding me of my loss, but also, you know, it's making me feel guilty about feeling happy about something and having another baby after I've experienced the loss, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the counselling can be really key because we don't talk about it within our family and our community. So at the moment, there's a lot of South Asian families who don't have a space at all. And a lot of couples don't feel like they can talk to each other about it either because they don't want to upset the other person or bring it to the table because they don't know how it's going to be, how they're going to react, etc. So I think counselling can give families that space, and you can have counselling as couples as well. So there is couples counselling out there during this time, or individual. And I think it's really important to be able to have that space to say, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I'm staying up all night because I'm scared. I'm staying up all night because I'm worried that I haven't felt baby move in a month, or I'm staying up all night because it's taking me back to my last experience. And again, counseling is so individual. And I think that's why for South Asian families, maybe it's more important because it's so personalized and it's so individual. Because a lot of the times they don't know what to say, they don't know
Yeah,
what to do, they don't know how to be. And what counseling does, it gives you that space to literally just be you. And what a therapist would do in that situation is to encourage the person to be who they are in their whole selves, bring themselves as they are, because there's nothing that you can say in that room that is wrong. There is nothing that you will say in that room that is judged. There's nothing that you will say in that room that is bad. Do you know what I mean? Even if you
yeah,
feel that internally, like everything that you're saying, it's an outlet um to help you talk about something so private, so personal, to give you the tools. So that's the other thing that hopefully counsellors will be able to do, is give you the tools to manage the day-to-day of pregnancy after loss, but
yeah,
not in a way that is generic, but something that is going to work for you, because that counsellor will know you and what will work for you. So something that might work for one person may not work for the other. And the other thing that I think is really important for pregnancy after loss is because of the trauma that can be brought up. If somebody hasn't grieved well after their loss, or have a lot of stuff that they're still holding on to, that can come out, during
yeah,
that pregnancy. So it's important that they have a safe space to process the loss, as well as the anxiety that comes up with the pregnancy, and then all the other layers that come with it.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it gives them sort of that safe, dedicated space to work through that. Yeah, no, I definitely see that. Well, thank you so much for I mean, obviously it was such a small amount of time and there's so much to say and
Yeah.
so much work that we can do, but I'm hoping this video opens up a little bit of a conversation around counselling and
Yeah.
South Asian communities and accessing services, but also helps some families realise if they want to go for counselling, it's okay. That it is an okay thing to do. But yeah, I think with more representation and more work in the community and with families, we can get to that point where people feel like it's okay. It's not a shame or anything like that, but it's a
Yeah.
journey.
That's it, exactly. And there are directories out there specifically for our communities. So if you are
Yeah,
looking, and for some people, they might not want someone from community either, because it's too familiar. So there's no expectation to go with somebody who is from your community, but it's about really thinking about what you want from a counsellor. There
yeah,
are directories. I think there is one specifically for South Asian counsellors, there's another one for Black Asian counsellors and stuff. So it's really important to start looking at what is it that you want. And yeah, there is nothing wrong with counselling, and it's so private. And I think one of the main things that I want to mention is I think there's the fear of people knowing that you're going to counselling. Counselling, we as counsellors
yeah,
hold confidentiality. It's so important to us. No one needs to know that you are going to counselling but you. No one. It is private. There is going to be no counselors. Like, even for example, I speak to my clients specifically before we start counselors about if I do see you in outside in an environment, I will act like I don't know you unless they are
yeah.
comfortable. So confidentiality is so important for counselors. So nobody needs to know that you go into counseling. It is yours, it is private. So taking that step and maybe speaking to a few counselors to understand where they're coming from, and seeing who you connect with, just taking that first step.
Thank you. I will put some links to your
Yeah,
Instagram as well, because you obviously do a lot of content, and links to Usher training as well.
yeah,
But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining me.
that's great. Thank you so much, Amni.